There were three brothers who lived well enough in the house at the three-road crossroads, by the shore of the sea, at the edge of the forest, at the foot of the great mountain, on the well-travelled road to the west. At least they lived well, but they were never content in each other's company. The two older brothers were strong, straight, tall as trees, unbending and unflinching in all that the weather could throw at them, and from a distance, more handsome than any man has a right to be. But, for all that they looked good, fair and strong, in their hearts they were as dark and as deep as any muddied stream, and devious and cunning as any old fox that has given hounds the chase, but not the kill, over many a long winter. Theirs could have been a good and varied life, full of travelled tales, borne on accents passed by tongues from well beyond their shore. And although they wanted not for food or drink, goods or comfort, the two older brothers bore their lives with little grace. Each dawning brought a new stranger to their door. They came seeking warmth, food, and a willing ear for their tales before they took to the road again. All of the brothers were better than well known as guides on these rough roads, and guide you they would, until the sun set beyond the lower peak of their mountain. They would take you no further, for they had not the need to travel more than one day's journey from their home, as all the world would come to their door with all that the brothers could need to live a simple life. The youngest brother, though not strong or fit, fair or handsome, had a heart that was as warm and full as his brothers were dark and cold. He was willing to help without being asked, even though his arms were weak and body bent, and he was always hungry to hear the travellers' tales. And each new story would be heard, remembered, retold and rejoiced in at the new telling, as he helped each stranger a little further on their never-ending road. And the stories grew, longer, stronger, bigger and better in the telling, as all the best stories do, until many forgot about their journey and stayed to listen a day longer to Gerach, for that was the youngest's name. And it was this that brought the great ill feeling between the brothers. And it was this that caused the brothers to part forever. For the older brothers only knew brute strength as the measure of a man, and only respected fist and muscle, and never understood how strangers chose their runt of a brother as a guide, when they could have had them. Indeed, many of the travellers took no help at all from Gerach, saying that their footsteps fell a little easier, their packs a little lighter, as they feasted themselves on his many strange tales. The high stony road, rain-washed and bare by the back of the house, led to the top of their mountain. Of course, they did not own this great benign giant, but theirs were the only regular footfalls to be felt from one season to the next. The road itself led, they knew, nor cared not where, as did the low road by the edge of the raging sea, and the dank path that threaded itself through the wood to the front of the house. All were a mystery to their eyes beyond their one day's journey. But these three could travel more in that one day than many could travel in two. But it was woe betide those who did not keep up with the older brothers, as they would feel the strength of their rebukes, until they would scramble on, footsore and fearful, weary but glad that their time with these two quarrelsome beasts of men had ended. They knew nor cared where each road ended, each taking in turn to guide the paths through the woods, the valley, and by the sea. They knew well the stranger's hand upon their door, seeking help in their long journey. Seemingly glad they were for the company, money, and goods left in their wake. All of these gifts were given for being shown the truest path. Gerach, truly glad for anything they left, revelled in the chance to have an easy excuse to weave his tales. But these older brothers, although they asked for nothing, expected much for their services. Many and various were these wayfarers, and strange to tell, each visited them only once, never to be seen at their doorstep again. But this did not bother the two elder brothers, as strong and old, young and bent, and all who passed by the cottage would envy Con and Finn their peace, solitude, and mastery of their paths. It was only Gerach who longed to see a friendly face again. His brothers, ill-fitted to companionship, saw each traveller as just another piece of gold in their pocket, and paid no heed to their needs and wants, unless it benefited them. Now, just as the seasons change, so did the roads. It would be a foolish man indeed who did not enjoy the warm, wind-swept slopes of the mountain in the height of autumn, or the mellow, leaf-lit shelter of the woods in the smothering heat of summer. The sea, ever-changing, brought its majesty to all of the seasons, glistening so strongly through spring suns, calm and inviting in the summer to foot-worn, pack-weary limbs, radiant in autumn, but wicked in winter, with its breath-quickening, heart-fearing roar and thunder. Each of the paths had their favoured season, and Con and Finn made sure that one or the other took each road at its best, saving the worst for their poor, hapless but happy younger brother. And it was this also that caused the brothers to scratch at the sore of ill feeling, and it was this that also caused them to part forever. For Gerach, ever glad to help even his cruel brothers, cared not whether the road was hard or long, or that the others had an easy time of it. For while he fought the mountain's winds in winter, the sea's fury in spring, and endured the poor shelter of the leaf-shorn forest road in the eye of the blizzard, the brothers laughed at his simple delight and joy of life, and made him the scapegoat for their own dark, uncaring hearts. True, it was not unusual for brothers to fight, or cause the other to wish that they had been born an only child, and true, Gerach, whilst not the easiest of men to live with his eternal hopes and gladness, he readily accepted the rough fate dealt to him, the lowly way that he was treated by his own flesh and blood at the heart of his own home. He knew that he had not the strength of his brothers, or their wealth, however fearfully given. He knew that he was not their father's chosen, as he was gleefully reminded at every waking moment by his brothers. He could feel the weight of their scorn and their contempt, but through all of this, he never let them through the walled citadel of his heart, and though he remained uncared for, alone in their company, he was, by far, stronger in spirit than his brothers could even dream, for all of their bluff and blustering ways. And it happened upon one cold winter's day, and here is the start of the parting. A young girl came beating on their door. Strange enough it was that a woman should be in this lonely place, but a child, and a girl child at that, to be here and asking to be shown the lonely way to the high meadows on the far side of the mountain. It was as much as the three of them could do but to stand there and gape. "Well," says the girl, "you going to show me the way to the top of this great beast of a mountain? Or are you going to stand there till I've grown old enough to take the three of you across my knee and give you a good tanning for being such brutes as to leave a poor stranger by your doorpost in the middle of winter?" Con was the first to speak. Face flustered, the fire of his temper getting the upper hand of his reason. "Why, you cheeky young besom, have a good mind too." And Finn held his brother back, for even he knew that here there was something not as it should be. The child never flinched, for all that the two at the door were head, body and shoulders taller than she. "Yes? You'll what? Beat me till I cry? Scalp me till I never dream of sitting again?" At this, Gerach, who was half hidden behind his brothers, roared with laughter, for these were words that were well known to him, for they had been in his mind when he was a child, but had never had the courage to come from his own lips, when he had suffered at the hands of these self-same brothers. At the time, he thought naught of it, judging it as the frightened response of any child when faced with a brutish bully, but in later years, he would remember long and hard the look in the girl's eye. Strong, never scared, cold. "Come in, come in. You're as welcome as any at this house, be it man, woman or child," said Gerach. The girl, snow glittering in her hair like choicest diamonds, pushed past the two dumbfounded brothers and sat in the biggest chair by the side of the roaring fire, as if she owned the house, fields, beasts and barn. It was all that Gerach could do to keep his laughter to himself, for not even he would dare to sit in his father's old chair. Not only did Con keep the best of the roads to himself, he saw it as his birthright to have the best seat in the house, and he would fight all, kith, kin and child, if need be, to make sure that all stayed that way. But before he had a chance to tell this whelp of a girl just what he was going to do to her to make sure she knew her station in this, his house, she spoke again. "So, which of you is man enough to take me on my chosen path? And I'll tell you now that I mean to travel as soon as you've fed me a decent meal, which I trust will be soon." All of this was said without the wit of a smile or a drop of a fear, for never, not in his wildest times, when his brothers had pushed him further than any man should have to endure with their wicked usage, would Gerach have spoken to Con so. It was all the more delicious to watch, all the better to savour, when it wasn't him who was going, or at least he thought was going, to get the rough edge of his brother's tongue and boot. For child or no child, no one had ever spoken to his brother in this way, and it was this, that no one had ever spoken to him without fear or a belly full of wine that probably struck him dumb as if he had never had 2 words of his own to rub together in the whole of his cross-tempered life. Finn, though blessed without a grain of understanding, could still sense that something was not right. Had not his brother uprooted trees to beat family for the want of a sixpence? Had not he himself enjoyed Con's temper and fists on no small number of occasions when the fancy had taken him? This child in his house, in his chair, talking in this way, was truly bile upon scorn. For all that he had not the capacity to comprehend what was going on before him, Finn too was beginning to enjoy the spectacle of his giant of a brother belittled by his own fireside by a strip of a girl. "Truly, I have stumbled upon a house of dumblings and fools," said the girl. "Is there none of you with a voice in your throat to reply to me? I want to go to the high meadows today, before I do get much older. Is there none of you great galoots going to answer me?" Con found his tongue, albeit a pitiful small voice that now came from his lips. "You heard the girl," said Con to Gerach. "Give her a meal, and take the mountain path, and you can take this." And here he cleared his throat and regained his own voice. "This wretched witch of a girl from my sight." The words were spat out in haste, like bad meat in a poor meal. This caused no small surprise with Finn and Gerach, but it was nothing compared to the astonishment that almost drowned them when the girl turned slowly and with a dark glint in her eyes and addressed Con thus. "Is it not the name of Con that is spread about as the greatest of the guides to all travellers on the high road? Is it not the name of Con that is used to strike fear in the hearts of young children when they resist the night and sleep is hard to find? Are you trying to tell me that this poor specimen of a man," and here she pointed to Gerach, "that this is the great Con?" Her finger was still pointed arrow-sharp towards Gerach, her eyes still fixed, unblinking, on Con's. Not a sound was heard. It was as if all in the company were waiting for something unspeakable, terrible to happen. "No, I am he," said Con. Gerach heaved a sigh of relief as the child's hand lowered. For all that he was used to being talked of in this way to his face, this time it was all the more hurtful, coming from an innocent's lips. "Then you shall be my guide, and I will eat now before we travel. Be ready, for I will not have any further delay." For once, the eldest brother did not protest. In fact, it was a beaten and broken man, head bowed, sat in an unfamiliar chair, who was cowed before this child. Little did his two younger brothers know, as they fed the girl, an uneasy silence heavy upon the air, that this would be the last time that they would see their brother. And here is a strange thing. Meal was made enough for all, but the child demanded more than all of the brothers put together, and she ate as no man 10 times her size would eat. And still she held out her bowl for more. More was made, and still more was eaten, until there was not a mouthful or crumb of food left in pan, platter, shelf or cupboard in the house. The meal finished without a word being spoken, only questioning, fearful looks passing between the two younger brothers as they served to her huge hunger. The eldest, gazing, seemingly eyeless, was lost to them forever. She stood, readied herself, and signalled Con to the door as you would call a dog to heel. She stopped in the open doorway, her fingers upon the handle, her hair once again bejewelled by snow. Reaching, without looking, into the folds of her snow-wet coat, she pulled out an old wooden plate, saying, "Listen well. Be generous in spirit to all who pass this way. Give them as they ask, feed them as they want, and you will have riches and food enough for the rest of your days." She threw the plate to the table, slamming the door closed, locking the fire of the two remaining brothers' curiosity and fear in the house, as the plate spun noisily upon the table. There was not time to ask or snatch a farewell from the girl or their brother. They just stood, transfixed by the clattering gift upon the table. Outside, Con and the girl trudged out and onward, the girl leading the way to the top of the mountain. Curious indeed that the girl had come in search of a guide, and yet seemingly knew the way already. The only noise that cut through the roar of the wind was the crackle of snow beneath Con's boot. The girl moved without a sound and left not a mark upon the path. All of this would have caused him to mightily question this strange child, or could even have struck fear through to his bones, for he had never had to follow anyone in his life, not even as a child. But he moved, as if in a daze, each footstep grudgingly followed footstep, upward at the girl's unstopping heel. It was not until they were in the meadow by the far peak of the mountain that Con, as if waking from a dream, called to the girl to stop. "Enough! Enough! How did it come to be in this place?" His speech was still like those who have been newly awakened. His breath came in deep gulps, sharp, clear, cutting to the very centre of his body, blurring his sight in its steamy clouds. As he stood there, back bent, hands upon his knees, there was only a glimmer of recognition of the journey, the child, brothers, and a house by the crossroads. It was all the more confusing that this child stood before him, with not a bead of sweat upon her brow, and he, doubled at the effort, heart beating through his chest, was like an old crone, spent and without the will to continue. "Well, Con, here is our party. Her voice sounded as if it came from the far side of the valley, shrouded in echo, distant but clear. "And I give you a choice. You can return to your home if you go back upon my footsteps on the path through the valley. On the path. Oh, You can make a new road of your own choosing. And you could find riches and pleasure aplenty if you were wise enough to turn your back upon your old ways and seek the help of others upon your road. All of this was said in an ever fainter voice, until Con stood in this field of snow, alone and unsure of anything but his name. He looked at the ground and saw only his own footprints in the snow, but they became harder to see as the flurries of snow covered the whole of the mountain. Even in this confusing, unfamiliar place, he knew that it would be unwise to strike back up the mountainside to head into the storm, as his legs had not the strength to climb and could barely manage to keep him upright. So, walking and stumbling as if in a half-remembered dream, Con set off on a road of his own making down the far side of the mountain, never to return to his own home again. In the years that followed, little known to him, he did almost touch upon his own valley many times during his life of wandering, but only by chance, and never to regain his old ways. For how long Finn and Gerach stared at the clattering wooden plate on their table, it is hard to say. Whether it had just stopped or whether it had lain still for hours, Gerach could not say. All they knew was that their limbs felt stiff and unused, their minds clouded with only the dull rattle of the plate in their ears. They looked outside. The snow was deep and thick upon the hillside, wiping the countryside clean of all footsteps, flat and crisp, ready for a new beginning.
Good. I'm glad he's gone,
said Finn, in a voice that he would never have dared to raise in Con's presence. He moved over to the old chair by the now dying fire, absently running his finger over the smooth, age-worn back, and promptly placed himself in its generous arms.
And there's an end to him, and good riddance. Now there'll be some changes, now that I'm in charge.
All of this was said in what Finn thought was a magisterial voice. But if the truth be known, under Gerach's sad gaze, he looked like a king of fools, pompous and inflated with his own importance, like some drunken braggart telling the world how to run its business, when he has not the wit or intelligence to run his own life well, which, unfortunately for Finn, was just as it had always been. Dignity, humility and care were all strangers to him, and as Gerach looked on, he thought that all that had changed was the name of he who would cause him strife.
Right. You can get me something to stop this gnawing hunger for a start.
Here he picked up the plate, thrust it at Gerach and said,
Serve me on this. I've a mind to feed off this witch child's present.
These last words slithered from behind Finn's neglected teeth in a mocking screech, which, given that Finn had a voice that would curdle soured cream already, only caused Gerach the more pain. But how was he to feed even a sparrow, never mind his overbearing brother, when the girl had eaten all that there was to eat in the house? And then a knock came, loud and strong, insistent and clear as a crack of thunder. For all that the brothers had learned to accept the stranger's hand upon their door at any time of day or night, after the strange events of the day, the loss of a brother, the child, their empty larder, they both looked towards the door, as if they were expecting old Nick himself to be standing there, tally sheet in his hand, ready to cross their souls off his list. Not that Finn had much of a soul to barter with, but it was he who hissed at Gerach.
Go on! Answer the door! You're the one that they all want to hear with your stupid stories. You answer the door for a change.
And it wasn't just a fancy, but Gerach was sure that there was a twitch of fear in Finn's voice. This was all the more surprising, since he had only seen him cower beneath his elder brother's hand. All the more surprising that he was allowed at the door first. as his two older brothers had always pushed him aside to judge the pickings of any traveller who came that way. It had always caused Gerach much pain to be treated so, not that he wanted the best for himself. It was just that the false smiles of his brothers and their sweet words as they greeted each journeyman at their door, and cursed their backs as they left, caused him always to realise why no one ever sought Con and Finn as a guide a second time, and why, because of his savage brothers, he could never exchange a tale a second time with an old friend upon the road. The knock came again. Louder. Longer. Harder. Gerach was awoken from his thoughts by a boot to his breeches from his ashen-faced brother.
Tell them we're ill. Tell them we're not here. Tell them there's nothing to eat. Tell them anything. Just get them from my door. I've no mind for anything this night.
Gerach thought how true this was, but why this night should be so different from the rest of Finn's life, he could not yet tell. He was beginning to absorb his brother's fear, oozing from his breath, body and eyes. But still, what did he have to fear? Whomsoever was on the other side of the door could be no worse than the apparition of Finn, his coat gripped to his chin, eyes wide in the darkening room, using his fist to point to the door.
Go on! What are you waiting for?
The flailing of Finn's leg missed Gerach a second time, and now he looked even more ridiculous, half out of his chair, neither sitting nor kneeling nor lying on the floor, his eyes wide with terror. Gerach gripped the door and swung it open to see not the child, not the devil himself, but an old man, eyes bright, cheeks blazing with the flush of winter upon them, an easy smile upon his lips, and a voice to which laughter was no stranger.
Well, I was beginning to think that I had better continue my journey through the night,
said the old man.
Well, better you had,
said Finn from the floor.
What do you want?
Please, don't get up on my account. It is a strange custom of greeting that you have in this house, but I accept it, and I thank you for your hospitality.
All of this was said with a puckish grin that nearly pushed the lines of age away from his features, and it could be seen in this half-light that this was a man who had been the envy of many. He smiled to Gerach and nodded over his shoulder towards the door. There, by the opened doorway, were his burdens and baggage. No more, no less, than any other, but it was as much as Gerach could do to drag them out of the ravening cold and into the house.
And you must be Gerach,
said the old man.
You're the teller of tales. I have waited long for this meeting, and I will hear your stories this long night.
Finn let out a malodorous guffaw of disapproval.
Not another one of these simple-minded buffoons who gain delight in your stories, fit only for babes and simpletons.
Gerach could not be truly sure, but he would have sworn on a church made of Bibles that the old man winked at him, an impish grin resting on his lips. Again, he could feel dangerous laughter rising in his body, but he knew full well that to laugh now would only bring a tongue-lashing upon his ears from Finn, who unfortunately was in full-throated voice.
Anyway, we've nothing to give you old fool. You can't fill your belly with stories, and your throat will stay dry for the want of a drink in this house. The last stranger who came across our threshold ate all that we had, so we've nothing to offer you. So you might as well get yourself on the road and be gone.
Finn, you do me a disservice.
But he was not to be stopped.
And what a grown man could want with children's tales?
Finn, if you would but listen.
It's beyond me. All they're fit for is...
And here he did stop, a puzzled look meandering across his features, which, for all the world, made him look as if he were in great pain. And judging by his face so contorted, An intelligent thought would surely die of loneliness in Finn's mind for the want of a companion.
How did you come by my name, old man? I have not spoken it. My half-wit of a brother.
Truly scorn indeed, thought Gerach, to be called a half-wit by this fool.
My half-wit of a brother has uttered ne'er a word since you came into my house. Tell me, and tell me now, how you came to know my name.
Well, Finn.
And the silence could be cut with a knife. In the act of repeating his name, the old man was so obviously draining every last drop of curiosity from this audience of two.
Just as Gerach is known as the teller of tales, the name of Finn is the substance of stories throughout these lands and beyond.
Finn noticeably sat up and preened himself, as if gazing longingly into the depths of a mirror.
Oh, really?
He said.
Tell me more of these stories, as I think I could listen to these.
Finn, too dull to realise that tales can be told of base metal as well as of fine gold, thought only of how heroic he would be in these stories, which for once, it seemed, would hold even his half-formed interest.
Enough talk of tales. Before Gerach and I tell our stories, I need to eat and drink.
Disappointed is not enough to describe the way in which Finn visibly slumped into his chair like a spoilt brat denied another's favourite plaything, when he thought that he would be robbed of the glory of stories about himself. "We have nothing to feed ourselves with. I would gladly give you all that I could," said Gerach. "But my brothers and I... My brother and my..." And here his voice trailed to nothing, remembering that now he seemed to have only the one brother, and that to tell the story of this day's events would be too fanciful even for him to tell.
No matter,
said the old man.
I have some victuals in my pack, poor though they are, and I will gladly share what I have with you both. Bring me a plate.
Without thinking, Gerach placed the girl's plate before him, as the old man reached deep into the smaller of his two bundles and drew out a skin bag by its woven drawstring. From it, he placed some dried meat, some fruit, a crustless loaf the size of a fist, and a leather bottle, and laid them all upon the plate. With a knife, produced from under the folds of his cuff, he began to divide what was there into 4. The old man made sure, time and again, by cutting and moving the food, that all 4 of the portions were equal in size and in content. Then one portion was placed on each of their plates. The 4th remained upon the wooden plate. And it was in the distraction of watching him divide and redivide the food that, of a sudden, without them seeing how, they each had a huge meal before them, and still there was a small portion left upon the girl's plate. And yet it was not such a great-sized bag which had been produced to give them all that they needed for this meal. Finn was struggling with the arithmetic of it all. 1 small bag, 3 plates, 4 portions, and now all of this food. The old man looked at Gerach, as if challenging him to ask how this wonder had come about. Gerach stared. A sea of questions rushed through his head. Did the old man know the child? Was this some test of his will to believe in what his eyes told him? Was the portion left upon her plate for the child's return?
What about something to drink, old man?
It was obvious by Finn's tone that he had given up the why of the meal and was now settled upon the how much, as was ever his custom to seek the fair lion's share. The old man, still looking at Gerach, asked for cups. 3 chipped and cracked glasses were put before him, and he carefully placed them onto the wooden plate and poured out some red wine from the leather bottle into each of them, always taking care to leave a small portion inside of the bottle yet to be stoppered. Finn's lack of wit and tact were rivalled only by his shortage of manners, as he, without the employment of knife or fork or spoon, tore and ripped the food before him with his unwashed, grime-caked fingers. Although used to his brother's mealtime rituals, in another's presence they seemed all the more horrifying, and Gerach could only give an apologetic look to the stranger in their midst and say, "You are welcome in our—"
"Our?"
said Finn. "I can only say," he weighed his words carefully, "I can only say that you are welcome in this house, and my brother and I thank you for your kindness and this meal."
It is true what they say about you, that you give each as they want and feed as they ask, and I ask you now to eat well.
It was now Gerach's turn to look puzzled. Were these not the words that the girl had spoken already in this day? They had seemed to run through his mind over and over. How could the old man know what had been said in this house?
Is there something wrong with this meal? You do not eat.
Gerach shrugged his shoulders, cast off his puzzlement, and took a piece of bread from off his plate and tasted the sweetest, softest, honeyed bread that had ever lain upon his tongue. It gave him a start, so much so that he sat upright in his chair like a leveret caught unawares at the entrance to its warren.
My friend,
and Gerach liked the sound of these words.
My friend, what troubles you now? First you do not eat, then you take a mouthful and stop. Is the food not to your liking? It is a poor meal indeed, but I would gladly give you mine if there is something wrong.
No, it's nothing, and I gladly thank you for this meal. And he continued to enjoy and explore the wonderful tastes of all of the food upon his plate. The wine was the finest he had ever drunk, for all its lowly container. This was indeed the best and strangest meal he had ever enjoyed. Not so for his brother, for all that the three had been served the same food and had watched it being divided and given out from the same plate.
"This bread is stale,"
said Finn, spittle dribbling down his chin.
"How old was the beast that this tough meat came from?"
The words were sprayed from his mouth, so that none in the company was spared a spit-filled spark from his exploding, malcontented speech.
"And this old wine! You've kept it too long, old man, but I suppose it will have to do for this one night. Give me some more wine."
Gerach could only look on with great sadness at his brother, bereft of all graces as he treated this kind stranger the way that he himself knew only too well. It had not always been so. They were equal as young children, but time and allowing had worn away at any pretence of family ties, till each endured the other's presence like an unremembered scar. Gerach bore no ill will towards his brother, but Gerach was the cause, in Finn's mind, or what there was of it, for all of his scant luck. Finn would never be able to recognise his own hand in his own misfortune. Blame had to be given, and Gerach was the defenceless target. Finn, again buried in his meal, continued to grab at what was before him. For one who did not find the meal agreeable, he was making the best, or the worst of it. As more was needed, more was taken from the portion upon the plate, again divided into 4, with one portion placed on each of their plates, and one left upon the girls'. Each time there was sufficient for a good meal for them all. Each pouring, with some left behind, gave them drink enough until...
"If we are to eat, then let us eat. If we are to drink, then let us drink,"
said Finn with more slobbering than talk.
"I'm tired of this cutting and giving, cutting and giving. Give me that!"
And here he grabbed the wooden plate and cleared all that was left onto his own, while Gerach and the old man looked on. The old man had a strange, half-smiling, unsurprised look in his eyes, as if this had been his purpose, and without a glimpse of disappointment, he handed over his bottle. If Finn had disgraced himself before, it was as nothing to the way that he gobbled and guzzled at his meal and drink now. The others, unable and unwilling to eat in the presence of such a debauched spectacle, sat and waited until this pig amongst men had scraped his and their plates clear of any crumbs or gobbets. If he could, he would have consumed the very smell of the food from the plates. Still licking his filthy fingers, Finn spoke.
Is that it?
The wine was beginning to take the upper hand.
I need some more wine. Get me some more wine.
Gerach almost got out of his seat through habit to fetch to his brother's need, but the old man signalled him to stay where he was.
Finn, Finn, I wished this night that you had surprised me, but you have eaten more than your share, and taken all that I had to give, and have given me nothing in return. You have taken all that there is. There is no more.
He paused.
Not for you.
Not for you. With little thought that it was the stranger who had brought this food to their table, Finn sat as well as he could in his father's chair and demanded,
Now, old man, now that you've been fed, tell me of the stories about me.
His eyes were heavy, his lips and lids, cheeks and jowls, presented him with an almost comical mask as he struggled to keep his head still and his eyes fixed on one object at a time.
You have asked, so you shall get the stories you have so richly deserved for too long.
The old man settled himself by the table and looked straight at this wreck of a man and began.
Some men can take their wine, and others let it wash their brains clear. You, Finn, are well known for being a drunken lout, incapable of drinking one glass without becoming like a starving pig at the trough. You have not one redeeming grace. Yours is a life to be pitied. You have wasted so much of what little was given to you.
Gerach could feel his jaw slackening in wonderment, not just at the audacity of the old man tempting fate with these words, which would undoubtedly earn him a sound beating, but it was the beaming, drink-laden smile cracking Finn's face that caused him to gasp and draw his breath between his teeth. It was as if Finn were hearing himself described as a saint, good and caring, fine and noble, and the more the old man told the truth about his wasted life, the more Finn nodded his wine-heavy head in agreement.
Yes, you have surely become the butt of many a story. Children are warned not to become like you, and to avoid you at all costs. Travellers dread your presence, and draw straws to venture along these paths. The loser always gains your name.
Gerach felt as if he would burst if he sipped in any more breath. This last chiding seemed to give Finn unbridled pleasure. He was grinning a full, cracked-toothed grin as Gerach released all the air and contained disbelief from his lungs and body.
What's the matter, brother? Can't you believe that someone at last appreciates me for what I am? I notice you have become silent, silenced in the presence of a real storyteller.
The old man continued.
You, Finn, are renowned as a buffoon, a bully, and a clod. Such is your fame, that your name is used to describe any fool in village and town. Your stupidity is only matched by your greed.
The furious, agreeing nodding of Finn's head slowed until his face could no longer be seen. He rested his chin on his chest and open-mouthed plummeted into sleep. Slumped, immobile in the chair, he looked, if it were possible, worse than he did awake. The last remnants of his inane grin lingered on his lips, and for all that he could have been a handsome man, his manner made you wish that a first meeting was always the last. "Old man, I do not understand, for all that you said was the truth, and yet...
Gerach, you are a fine storyteller. You must know that many will only listen to that which they choose to hear. I tried to warn you before I spoke that you would have been clattered and rattled by Finn had you interrupted, no matter what you had said. He chose to hear only what he wanted to hear. I thought that I was almost kind to him."
And here the old man drew Gerach close to him and whispered in his ear,
"You and I both know that I have but pricked the surface, and I mean to draw Finn's blood before the sun sets on another day."
They both looked towards Finn, crumpled in his stupor, spit from his ever-open mouth, staining the front of his clothes.
"Enough of him!"
The old man slapped his hand upon the table.
"It is you, friend Gerach, that I have come to hear. It is now your turn to tell me tales that will take me away from all of this."
His hand swept around the room in a grand gesture, and Gerach, never needing to be asked twice, told such stories as have never been heard before. Each fantastic tale was embellished with such embroidered words that he even surprised himself. And it was many times through that long night that they both forgot themselves in the glowing depths of their stories. The tales exchanged from voice to voice, never as a race, never to better the other, but to enjoy the effect each picture spoken caused in the listening. There was a great sadness to them both when the night ended, each feeling as if there were many tales yet untold. But the numbness of their faces through endless talking, laughing, chaffing and teasing bore testimony to the night well spent. Gerach had tasted from the heady cup of friendship as never before, and felt an icy grief upon his heart as he thought that this traveller would, like so many before him, be gone before this day had ended.
"Gerach, your face is full of parting, and yet I have not left. There are many things that I must do upon my road. That is my life. That has always been my choice. Do not miss me until I have gone.
Here, the old man leaned down, and again Gerach could not be sure, but it looked to him as if he deliberately brushed against Finn's leg as he slept. And the old man dragged out a small pouch from the bigger of his two bundles. Finn was less than pleased to be awoken so, but his pretence at returning to sleep was poorly maintained when the old man poured the contents of the bag onto the table. The rattling cascade of diamonds scattered this winter's dawn light like a sunlit waterfall, and it seemed all the less fitting to have such radiant beauty upon a rough, scrubbed table.
"It is little reward for your fine stories,"
said the old man,
"but it would please me if you would take one of these."
and here he placed an outstretched finger among the jewels, spreading them so that they could be better seen, and to cause their light to be spread once more in the room. Gerach was silenced, in surprise and hurt. His stories were freely given, and he felt as if he'd been dealt a low blow that would take all the breath from his body. His newly found friendship with this old man soured and burned upon his lips, devalued by the richness of the gems. The gleam of the diamond's light was reflected in Finn's eyes. He had, in a split second, catapulted from sleep to waking, and was staring, almost drooling in anticipation. Disgust, surprise, hurt and expectation hung in the air in equal parts. The silence was dark against the dazzle of the diamonds, unwanted and coveted by each of the brothers.
Well,
Finn was shaking his hands before him in wet-lipped frustration.
well, which one are you going to choose, for God's sake? Even you should be able to make your mind up. Choose one, for pity's sake.
His voice was trembling, like one who expects death to touch him.
Choose!
I will have... There was an unnatural calm in GERAC'S voice as Finn shuffled forward to the edge of his father's great chair. I will have... none of these jewels.
What?
Came as a limp croak from Finn's disbelieving throat. You have insulted me deeply. These jewels offend me. My stories were given in friendship without price. I will help you on your journey, but I will be glad when you have gone. The fire of exhausted pleasure that had so recently burned in GERAC'S eyes was gone. He was filled with despairing anger and hurt, and could not bring himself to look the old man in the face. Curiously, as the old man slowly replaced the diamonds one by one back into the bag, he was smiling. Finn stayed on forlornly, like a starving man watching a banquet being cleared as scraps for the beasts. His eyes followed each gem as it disappeared from his sight. He let out a series of whimpers as the bag filled. Just one would have been good.
Just one would have been nice. Just one. Just one.
Could be heard whispered beneath his breath. The silence was stifling. As the old man prepared himself for his departing, the gems returned to the biggest bundle, his pouch to the smaller.
It was never my purpose to offend you, friend GERAC.
The old man held out his hand towards him, but GERAC only turned away and snorted in disgust. This word, friend, that had caused him such delight, stung him in his offence.
I can see that my presence is no longer welcome in this house. It saddens me to leave you like this. I am unwilling to leave our new-formed friendship broken behind me, but I have many journeys left in these old bones before I cease my travelling. I will take my leave, but I will need a guide upon the road. Will you help me this one last time, GERAC?
The words had barely left the old man's thoughts when Finn leapt out of his chair and grabbed the old man's largest bundle and was by his side, ushering him out of the door, saying,
Let me help you. I know these roads as well as any man, probably better than most.
And here he shot a look at GERAC, as much as to say,
This prize is mine, do not interfere.
This was all the more astonishing as Finn had never taken to the road with any enthusiasm before. It had always been a task worthy of the gods to get him to cross the threshold, and now, to be standing there clutching a heavy bundle when a smaller, easier load was for the taking, it was a sure sign that Finn had designs upon the old man's treasure, and that his safety would be doubtful if left upon the road with Finn alone. GERAC rose. Insulted or not, he would not leave this old man to Finn's tender mercies. He put on his coat, took the smaller bundle, and walked to the door.
Where do you think you're going? No one has ever needed to travel with two guides. I am the match of any man upon these roads, and you will stay here.
Finn's meaning was all too obvious to GERAC.
I can see that I am the cause of much sorrow between you two brothers. I can only wish you to stop your fighting on my account.
The old man placed a hand on each of the brothers' arms, as much to separate them as to placate them.
Please, GERAC, I have survived long upon many roads. I will be safe from all harm upon this road.
And when he had said, all harm, he glanced knowingly at Finn.
Remain here in the peace of your home. Remember me well.
He leaned towards GERAC, only wanting him to hear.
You are the only one upon my road. who has ever refused even the smallest diamond. You know the true value of friendship above all things. You have done well. Yours will be a good and a prosperous life."
"Enough of this,"
said Finn,
"If we go, then let us go."
and he snatched the bundle from his brother and pushed the old man out into the snow's glare. Gerach, alone in the house with the old man's last words in his mind, he sat by the fire, puzzling at what he meant and worrying that he had been too hasty to judge his offer of a gift as an insult, and he thought hard about what he meant, that he had done well. Was it, after all, a test of his will to believe, a test of his need of friendship? Laden down with 2 bundles, it was now Finn's turn to see another's heel moving away from him upon the road, and for a brief moment he felt regret for the army of poor travellers he had dragged at his heel on all of his past journeys as their guide.
"Old man!"
bellowed Finn, for the old man was almost gone from his sight on the wooded path.
"Old man! You must wait for me! Or at least take one of these packs yourself."
The old man stopped and waited for Finn to stand beside him.
"Then I will take the biggest, and I trust then that you will be able to take me the safest way upon this road."
No, I mean, no. I will take the biggest, because it's not right that you should have to carry such a heavy load.
These were difficult words indeed for Finn. Sincerity lay heavily upon his shoulder.
"I will take the biggest."
And he clutched it to his shoulder as if his life depended upon it, and strode off through the trees, hoping to leave him lost in the forest, the better to take the jewels. But no matter which way he turned and scrambled, Finn could not lose this stranger. In fact, he seemed to know each shaded knoll and dell better than he himself. And it was not long before the old man, his pack swaying upon his back, left him behind again. All of this was just too easy, and it fitted well with Finn's plan.
Why should I have to lose him, when the old fool has struck off on his own, and has placed himself out of sight?
Finn flung the bundle to the nearest ditch, and fell upon it with a wild tearing and pulling at the tightly knotted cord. His fingernails were bruised and bloodied. Such was the great heat of his anxiety to gain what was not his. It was only after furiously digging and flinging empty nearly all of the bundle's contents that he reached his goal, the diamond bag. His breath quickened, his heartbeat drummed in his ears. Again, without care, he tore at the pouch's drawstring. Blood from his fingertips dripped upon the soft skin of the pouch as he dug his hand deep inside to feel the diamonds, colder than the air that he breathed, burning his skin with their delicious temptation. His blood mingled with them, spreading a crimson light upon his hands. He gripped the largest, about the size of a wren's egg, and held it up to the winter's sun to see it all the better.
"You shall be mine!"
From a far-off edge of the trees he could hear the old man calling his name, and quicker than a sigh he had returned the diamonds to the rightful place and had cast his chosen, plundered gem unseen into the darkness of his pocket. All of the bundle's contents were pushed and piled back pell-mell, and Finn, well satisfied with his work, bundle upon his back, ran to the direction of his called name and breathlessly met with Gerach in a clearing by the side of the snow-covered riverbank.
"You! I thought I told you to stay behind. I didn't want you to..."
Finn, I think that it was I who asked your brother to stay by the piece of his fireside.
The old man appeared as if from nowhere and warmly shook both of Gerach's hands.
For I am glad that he is here.
Finn was as surprised as he was unsettled and angered by the old man's and his interfering brother's presence. This was not the way that he had wanted his plans to go. He was uneasy under the old man's questioning gaze, resentful over his brother's curious eyes. He hoped that the guilty flush now upon his cheeks would be mistaken for a mark of his exertions, as the old man and Gerach both turned to him and began.
What has caused you?
Why have you been?
Where have you been all of this time?
How did you come to be?
Enough of this!
Gasped Finn.
I became lost.
The silence of the snow-deep forest was broken by the guffaws of the old man and his returned friend Gerach. The sleeping crows added to their joyful, noisy enjoyment as they took to the air in fright, seemingly carrying the news of this great joke upon their tuneless cawing. The great boastful Finn, guide above all men, admitting to being lost. It was just too agreeable to be believed, and the more they laughed under his baleful stare, the more anger reddened his face, and the greater became their convulsions until,
Enough, I say!
for all that the look upon Finn's face could have told anyone that he was in no mood to be derided further, it was some time before these two before him, helpless with blurted laughter, almost blind with tears of joy, could stop themselves long enough to listen to him.
You old man! You wanted a guide!
More laughter rose from their lips. It was as much as they could do but to collapse against each other, shaking from head to foot with suppressed mirth.
If you wish to travel through these woods, then ready yourself, ready yourself, ready yourself.
These words pierced the air and echoed from the far edge of the river's rocky bank. Finn stood, feet apart, nostrils blowing jets of steam in the cold midday air, a figure to be feared and despised, viewed with regret. Once again the old man and Gerach began to speak at the same time. I came after you to say that I'm true.
I am truly glad that
I realise now that what you have got...
I never meant to try to give you something that...
The old man raised his hand to silence Gerach, for he knew that their time together would not be long.
It would please me if you were to take just one stone to remember me by, not as a payment as you thought, but as a gift, as freely given as your stories. A bright, shining reminder that will always burn as bright as the light in your eyes by the fire's glow when you filled my head and heart with your wonderful tales.
He reached into his bag, and for all that it had taken the might of Finn's tearing and pulling to open the bundle, his movements were small, graceful, and released the diamond's pouch without effort. Although Gerach did not notice at the time, but he thought of it often, the old man was staring into Finn's uneasy face, judging his reaction, enjoying his squirming and surprise as he emptied the blood-stained bag into the outstretched palms of Gerach. He spoke in a clear voice that sliced the air with the unmistakable edge of its cold meaning.
Remember, my friend, if you wish it, all that you take can be returned, if you can find the owner, who may only be a journey away. I have always found that it is better to take what is freely given than to take that which you want without the asking. Choose well, my friend. Choose well, my friend.
The choosing was not easy. All of the gems had a brilliance that could turn a man away from what he knew was right for the want of possessing them, and Gerach knew that he had no real need of jewels when he had riches enough in his life with his love of the road and the seasons. He looked again and again at the jewels and chose the smallest of them all, as Finn muttered,
Idiot!
beneath his breath. Gerach said, I will have this one. It is more than I could ever need, and as small as the reminding I will need to have you back in my thoughts. He held it out to the old man, who smiled and said,
Each of these has a story to tell, and this has been the favourite of a prince of the Indies, and he did once with this.
His talking stopped as he took it from Gerach and held it close to his eyes to examine the encrusted blood upon its surfaces.
It is a pity to see such a thing of beauty stained so.
Always looking to Finn, who thrust his marked hands deeper into his pockets.
Let us hope that this river will wash it clean.
With the diamond between his thumb and forefinger, he put it beneath the flowing river's surface. It was difficult to see the diamond at all, once it was merged with the icy water, and the scattering drops from his hand as he pulled it back into the sunlight made a fiery display that lit up this small part of the great forest. Finn tight closed his right hand upon the stolen diamond in his coat and said,
What about me, old man? Do I not deserve some small reward for my day's work?
knowing full well that he had, locked in the darkness of his pocket, in the palm of his hand, that which did not belong to him, that which was not offered, that which was not given, and still he was asking for more. There was a resigned half-smile in the old man's tone.
I have never had to pay for the privilege of being robbed.
Finn gasped as his hand enclosed the polished, jagged faces of the gem in his grasp.
Robbed of a straight route from one who supposedly knows the way. You will get your reward at our parting.
And though there was a sinister edge to all that he said, Finn was relieved that his crime had gone unnoticed, or at least unsaid. It brought a shiver to Gerach's back, which he put to the day drawing to a close and the season's chill.
Although we may and might never meet again, remember me well, Gerach. We have more business upon this road before night. Lead on, Finn. I must leave this place.
And Finn did lead. The old man, this time content to follow, raised his hand without a backwards glance as a sign of his goodbye. Without knowing it, they had gone, and Gerach was left by the edge of the water, again uncertain of the truth of what he had seen and done. It was only the comforting feel of the small diamond glowing in his palm in the failing light that assured him that this had not been some dream-waking illusion. Finn had a spring in his step as he travelled ahead of his charge, a spring brought about by his glee at not being caught, or so he thought. Once out of the leaf-bare woods and into the open fields by the side of the cliff tops, Finn condescended to wait for the old man to catch him up. But he was not so far away behind. He'd been following him closely, always hoping that with time his conscience and conceit would be pricked, and he would admit to the misdeed that he had committed. For the old man knew full well what had been done, but it would have had to have been an almighty long road before Finn would ever see wrong in himself. He took it as his due, his right to take what he could. Why should others have something that I can make my own? In this, as with all things in his life, he had an answer and an excuse for all of his deeds and actions.
There! I have kept my side of the bargain. I have led you through to our journey's end. Now I want my reward, which I trust will be sufficient. And, old man, I warn you now that I will not be as lenient or as stupid as my dolt of a brother.
He had more confidence, now that there were only the two of them in the open air, and was incautious with his words, for, had he known his fate, he would have begged upon his knees to be given the chance to return the jewel to the old man.
Finn, I had hoped that you could change, but you have lived so long as the cause of so much regret to so many that you cannot turn now. I can only ensure that you no longer cause grief to your brother as I set you upon your road.
Give me no more of your riddles, old man. You set me upon my road. I choose where I go myself, and I will go upon my road with the biggest of the diamonds from your pack.
But you have taken that already. and it rests, like your fate, in the palm of your hand.
Finn was only slightly disconcerted when confronted with this truth, but so cocksure of himself was he that he pulled the jewel out and flaunted it beneath the old man's nose.
Do you mean this? Oh, I intend to have much more than this.
His mocking voice sounded the more shallow in this barren place.
And so you shall.
And here, as swift as the wind, the old man lunged forward and touched his index finger upon the diamond in Finn's open palm, saying,
As you have taken, so shall you keep, until you can return it to me. Return it to me. Return it to me.
The diamond glowed blood red in the dark, crisp night, illuminating their faces, one in dread surprise, the other calm, resolved. A throat-tightening stench of charred flesh filled the cool air as Finn, as though rooted to the spot, yelled to the heavens in pain and fright as the diamond sank beneath his skin into the bone and sinews of his right hand. Like one felled by a blow from behind, he toppled to the ground as the old man removed his touch. As he lay there, screaming, writhing, blubbering like a child, his blood mixing with the snow in the moonlight as he tried to cool his injured hand, the old man calmly picked up his 2 bundles and said,
Remember, my friend, if you had wished it, all that you took could have been returned. You knew me as the owner, and now I will always be only 1 day's journey away. From henceforth, you will know that it is better to take that which is freely given than that which you want without the asking. You did not choose well, my friend. This diamond was cut from the hand of an ancient upon the road to Jericho 7 centuries before my birth. This is your reward. If you catch up with me, then you can give the gem back. Until then, it is yours. Yours. Yours.
He turned his back and was gone into the vast openness of the fields. Although the smart from his wound was great, Finn managed to stagger to his feet to trail the old man. His right arm hung by his side, leaving a scarlet reminder in the snow of this fruitless task. But, be it weariness or be it pain, for every footstep of his, the old man took 2, until all that he could see were his impossibly light footprints in the snow and a dark, unclear shadow upon the horizon.
I know it's you, old man, and when I catch up with you, I'll give you more than this.
He held his hand high above his head as the silvered moonlight passed straight through, casting many faceted images upon the snow. For even in his punishment, Finn was ever unrepentant. Gerach returned to his home, this time truly alone. Echoes of voices from the past few days still rattled in the room. The look of the old man's wonder at their stories brought an aching, bittersweet smile to the end of his day as he settled to sleep. Before his eyes tight closed, he could see a strange but familiar object upon the table. It was the old man's leather bottle, and with this and the girl's plate, he gave each as they asked and fed each as they wanted for many years. And just as the roads change, so did the many and returning travellers upon GERACH'S ROAD, as it became known. Each friend with their favoured season and route, and all brought him tales to tell. Some were of an old man, always followed 1 day behind by a soured curmudgeon who claimed to have riches locked in a scarred, claw-closed fist that none could see. Gerach guessed that Finn was too dull to know that no matter how far he travelled, the old man would always be one day ahead. What he had stolen had truly become his, and his alone. Some tales brought a warmth to his soul. Tales told of a giant brute of a man who, despite his fearsome looks, always took the advice of strangers and met their eyes with friendship and helped each who asked. And for these stories, he was always glad. This tale that I have told you is the truth, for I heard it upon GERACH'S Road. Not from himself, but from one who had met a fellow stranger upon the road, to whom it had been told. And if it is a lie, then it's a lie I've been told.